All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly 30-minute workshop. My name is Dre Devots. I'm a systems engineer here at Variphy, and I'll be your host for today's session. Today, we're going to be walking through utilizing the new call scenario filters to generate a hunt group report. Here to present that today, we have Victor Verba, a fellow systems engineer here at Variphy. How you doing, Victor?
I'm good, Dre. How about yourself, buddy?
Doing fantastic.
Excellent.
Also, don't forget all our webinars are recorded and posted within 24 hours. Just head over to verify.com/webinars to find all of our latest webinars. First, we'll start off with a quick interview of our company and what we do. Then we'll jump into a live demo where Victor is going to guide us through the new call scenarios to filters to generate hunt group report. We'll leave time for Q&A. So during the demo, if you have any questions, make sure to enter them by accessing the Q&A option. After Q&A, we will award one lucky attendee a $50 Amazon gift card. So hang around and see if you won. Verify is the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration, deployable either on-prem or as a hosted cloud solution. We provide industry-leading CDR reporting and call analytics, as well as customizable dashboards and widgets, UCCX reporting, remote phone control, change management, Cube CDR, and our latest addition, Zoom and WebEx call reporting. If you have any questions on any of our features, please contact us at support@verify.com or reach out to your account manager. One more thing before we kick this off, Verify offers an enhanced consulting service to our customers. Verify's SE team engages with you on a one-on-one basis to remotely provide additional consulting, report building, dashboard configuration, and system monitoring assistance. This is a service that provides you a dedicated Verify SE to do the heavy lifting, giving you a stress-free, hands-off experience. For more information, contact your account manager, and we'd be glad to speak more in depth about pricing and terms about our enhanced consulting services or ECS. All right, I'm going to hand things over to Victor now. Remember to submit any questions into the Q&A panel, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Dre. Let me go ahead and open up my screen here. Thank you guys for joining us again. So today we're going to go ahead and focus a little bit on hunt groups. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about how Verify used to report hunt groups previously, which is still an effective way to be able to report hunt groups. But some of the new logic in Verify 15.1 is going to make that a little bit simpler for everybody. So the first thing I'm going to do is pop over to our analytics section here, and I'm going to run a general report for a hunt group. I'm going to use the original called party number filter here rather than the hunt group filter. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but the original called party number is going to go ahead and capture all of the calls regardless of whether they get answered or potentially roll to voicemail, depending on how your hunt groups are configured. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to report a hunt group number here and just view my results. I'm looking at the current week's data. And I've got several filters or several fields down here that we're going to take a look at, things like the date time origination. I added date time connect here because we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get into our call scenarios and our new filtering options for call scenarios that you see here. This has been a field that's available in Verify and really classifies all of the different statistic types that Verify produces and tells us each leg of the call and where it falls into a category. Or a scenario type. So for example, this call that I'm looking at here would be considered answered, connected, forward, medium duration, non-secured, and transferred from. And those are all the various call scenarios that Verify has available to it. So this column here, this detail column, is going to help identify what each call falls under from a scenario perspective. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a report, just general report. I'm not going to change too many filters here, and I'm going to toggle on cradle to grave so we could take a look at some of these calls and talk about how we're going to go ahead and narrow down just the calls that we're looking at from the hunt group. So the interesting thing about hunt group calls is when they come in, they do a couple different things. One, they're going to come into the hunt group, and the hunt group's going to receive that call. That creates a call leg. Then what the hunt group's going to do, depending on your environment, it's either going to pass the call off to an agent, pass the call off to a queue if you're using something like native call queuing. It could pass the call off to a voicemail, maybe if it's before hours or there's no agents available. So there's several different configurations within a hunt group that can cause the call to create additional call legs that still equate to the hunt group. In other words, my 77280. So what we could see here is when I just search for my hunt group number, I'm going to come up with 165 rows of data. All right. Doesn't mean that there's 165 calls. That's what we're here today to narrow down, is how many calls we actually had. So I'm going to click on the cradle to grave section here, or the related calls, and we're going to pick on somebody that's got a little bit of guts to it. All right. This is one particular call from my hunt group. Now, when we talk about that 165 total calls, what I'm searching for is this field right here. That's my hunt group number. Now, what you see in orange adds to our total count. So out of that 165 calls to my hunt group, this 77280 number, this one particular call has 2 calls that meet that criteria. Now, why is it like that? The reason being is because Call Manager generates a call leg when the call hits the hunt group, which is this one right here. And it also generates a leg when the hunt group passes the call off to the agent taking the call. So it actually creates 2 different rows to the hunt group. All right. Now, when we're trying to get total counts and total volumes, we don't necessarily want to count this twice. We really want to count this once because it's really one call being answered over here by Bill. We really want to try to eliminate what I'll call the pass-through record. And this is basically the call just being passed through the hunt group and doing its normal routines. Now, within a call manager, there's several different ways that calls can pass through a hunt group. Like I said, they could be queued, they could go to voicemail, they can pass through one hunt group and then go to another hunt group. It really depends on how that hunt group is configured. Through Variphy reporting, there were several different ways that we can kind of whittle this down to be able to just report this one leg. The most common one was being able to use the cause codes and identifying which leg the call actually ended on. So normal call clearing, if you're not familiar with that, means that is the end of the call. When I see a normal call clearing, that one indicates who hung up the call, but it also indicates that that is the end of the call. So a lot of times in many environments, what we can do is we can whittle this report down a little bit by just saying, okay, only show me the hunt group calls that had a normal call clearing cause code. And I'm going to show you a demonstration of that. And this is a lot of how we used to be able to generate hunt group reports and get the numbers much closer to the total count of calls. We would add an additional filter for cause code, and we would just identify a normal call clearing. All right, because that is the end of the call. So if I view my results here, that's going to go ahead and help take some of those calls down. So now we can see we have 116 calls. And if I run my cradle to grave report here and just regenerate that report, and I just had that call there. Which one was that? Let's see if we can find Bill's call here. Let me go back up to the top. Helps if I actually open up that report. There we go. And now we can see what we did is we added that normal call clearing filter. So we're no longer counting. This row is not in orange, which means it doesn't go towards our total count, which is now 116 rows. And that was a great way to be able to filter down hunt group information. However, with hunt groups, there's a lot of different ways calls can traverse. They can be answered, they could be not answered, and we're going to take a look at a couple other rows here. I'm going to skip over to row. Let's go up to, let's take a look at row 97 here, or call sequence 97. This is another example of a hunt group call. Now, this is an example where that normal call clearing filter doesn't actually help us. It may hinder us a little bit. So you'll notice here that this is a call that came into my hunt group and was answered here by Kimberly, who spoke for about 2 minutes. But what you're going to notice here is the cause codes do not indicate the normal call clearing. The reason being is because it's not the end of the call. Kimberly then took this call and then transferred it outside of the hunt group to some other people. Now, when we utilize the normal call clearing, we would potentially miss this call because it doesn't fall into the normal call clearing filter. Right? That's one of the reasons that we have some new values to be able to report call scenarios. But there's other things. I had talked a little bit about being able to isolate calls that went to voicemail. And I talked a little bit about why we use this original called party number. The reason that we utilize this is because the call manager data, or Cisco call manager calls, when a call doesn't get answered off the hunt group, like this one up here got answered off the hunt group, we can see that the hunt pilot DN is actually populated. But you'll notice this call, it still went to the hunt group, Nobody was available to take the call. Looks like it was after hours. So our routine within our system automatically routes those to a voicemail. All right, we can see that it went to voicemail because we have a call scenario that says voicemail. All right, but if we were to report on the Hunt Pilot DN field here, we would skip this call altogether because it didn't actually get answered at the Hunt Pilot. And that same thing goes for an abandoned call. A call that was abandoned at the Hunt Pilot does not actually have the Hunt Pilot number on there. That is the reason that we search for the original called party number here. Right. So a lot of times we would have to do some magic, for lack of a better word. We could focus in on terminating cause codes. Sometimes for more complex environments, we could focus in on a calling party number being a hunt group and eliminate those calls. So there are a lot of different things, depending on how your environment was set up to be able to figure out an accurate count of how many calls actually came into the hunt group and who answered those. And it took a lot of looking through the data, but with the new filters, we're going to greatly simplify that. So looking at our call scenarios here, we have our scenarios. So we can see that this pass-through leg, or this leg that basically sends the call to the hunt group where it ultimately gets answered by a person, is considered not connected. It's not secured, and it's a transferred from. But what it is not is it is not an answered call. So what we can do is focus our hunt group reporting on answered calls. That's going to give us all of the calls that were answered then subsequently off of the hunt group. So if I kind of scroll through our data a little bit, we can notice that that's also going to go ahead and cover this call that got answered by Kimberly and then transferred. Now, this is the one that we could not use normal call clearing because it didn't end here. However, we can use answered to identify that the call was answered off of the hunt group. And I'm going to go ahead and scroll through here. We're going to take a look at a couple other ones. So I had drawn some attention to calls that went to voicemail. Now, again, this call still went to the hunt group, so we want to track it as a call to the hunt group. Maybe we want to see how many calls are coming in after hours or before hours. So we want this call to track. We're going to still report on our 77280 number, which is our hunt group number, but you'll notice that our call scenarios does not have answered. All right, so we can't just focus in on answered. However, we can focus in on the fact that it went to voicemail and it still has the hunt group. So in our call scenarios, what we can do is add multiple different scenarios into our report that amount to all of the calls that would be handled off of the hunt group. However, we're not going to focus in on things like calls that were not answered or did not go to voicemail or were potentially not abandoned. Right. So this call scenarios tab right here is a great way to be able to help eliminate certain calls that you may not want to see. So looking back at our report where we focused in on the normal call clearing, this is great because, again, this is going to give us a very good one-to-one relationship, but it is going to miss things that may have subsequently gone to the hunt group and then transferred somewhere else because it's not going to have that normal call clearing flag. All right. This is also going to go ahead and capture those calls that went to voicemail because they are going to have that normal call clearing flag. And if we look at some of our voicemail calls here, let's see if we can find one real quick. And let's see, these calls are being answered. So good job there. This is a call that went to our hunt group, went to our voicemail. Again, it does. Oh, this one does have the normal. Oh, this one has the normal call clearing flag. So this one would appear in there as well. Ooh, this is something that we'll focus in on later too. This is a good example here. So what we're going to do is utilize the new filter to very simply not have to worry about which digits went to the hunt group, which are the cause codes we need to focus in on. We're going to strictly focus in on the call scenarios and get a very thorough hunt group report. So to do that, I'm going to pop back over to Variphy and we're going to continue our search. So I'm going to remove my cause code filters. We don't necessarily need those anymore. We're going to leave our original called party number in here. That's our hunt group number. And then from our drop down here, we're going to go ahead and do our scenarios. And you'll see call scenario types. Now, we know when a call comes into the hunt group, one, we want to report the ones that are answered. In my case, calls can also roll to voicemail. We identified that. So we also want to report the scenario of all the calls that went to voicemail. Now, the only other scenario really that's going to take place is calls that may be abandoned. In other words, didn't get answered at all. They rang into an agent and then the customer subsequently hung up. All right. So by adding our hunt group, adding these three call scenarios and making sure that we are matching all search criteria, we're going to go from 116 calls to, drum roll, 139 calls that were presented to our hunt group, subsequently answered, abandoned, or went to voicemail. So essentially what we've done is we've used these various filters here to identify those calls that went to voicemail, to identify the calls that were answered, and eliminate some of these transfer legs that are basically just pass-through legs. Now let's go ahead and expand on that. So now we're looking at my hunt group. We can see 139 calls. Once I click export results, it's going to bring me to our standard report builder where we can add some fun metrics. So from here, I'm going to go to my search set statistics, and we're going to see the total count. This is going to be the total number of calls being presented to your hunt group, the average call duration, total call duration. We're going to add the computed ring time. If you're not familiar with what the computed ring time is, we do have a great webinar out there as well as a knowledge base article. But basically what computed ring time is allows us to follow calls sequentially and better compute a ring time than what's provided from the Cisco call data. We're also going to add things like our answered call count. So we want to see how many of these calls were answered. Again, we see 139 calls in there. Let's see how many were answered. We want to know how many were abandoned. So let's go ahead and add abandoned count in there also. And let's go ahead and scoot this guy up. And in my case, calls can also roll to voicemail. So we'll add a couple of those guys in there. And we do also offer some native call queuing within our system as well. So I'm going to put some queue counts in there, and let's just see how many of these guys are actually getting queued. All right. So essentially what I've done is I've just added some very general metrics to this to give me some insight into how my hunt group is performing. I also want to go ahead and focus a little bit on my my performance throughout the days and the weeks. So I'm going to turn on a quick chart here, and we'll do just hour of day, and yeah, we'll throw day. You know what? We'll throw date in there also. We've only got a couple days worth of data, and we're going to throw some charts: hour of day, date, total calls, and again, we also want to see, besides per hour of day or per day of week, not just the total volume, but how many of those are being answered, how many of those are being abandoned, and how many of those are going to voicemail. And I can always throw my queued call count in there as well. So essentially what we're doing is we're using the existing filter, again, focusing in on our hunt group number, focusing in on the 3 scenarios that are going to isolate just the singular call legs. And then we're just adding some metrics. You know, I always want to see who's answering those calls, so I'm going to add my end users in there. If you don't use end users and maybe focus more on device descriptions, just go ahead and change that over to device descriptions. And then we'll add some metrics for our end users. We'll add the total volume of calls, average call duration, ring duration. We'll add that computed ring time so we can see also, you know, how long it's taking our agents on average to answer a call on a per agent basis. And we're going to go ahead and add the answered count in here. Now, one thing you're going to notice here is that I am not going to add the abandoned count or the voicemail count into my agent metrics. And again, what I'm working out of here are my agent metrics. These are the metrics I want to see in the report on a per agent basis. The reason that we're not going to add abandoned or a voicemail count at the per agent basis is because when you're talking about a hunt group, it is not one person's fault that a call goes to voicemail, or it's not one person's fault that a call was abandoned. The purposes of a hunt group is multiple people are available or able to take that call. When Cisco produces data for a hunt group, if it's abandoned or if it goes to voicemail, it does not produce everybody that the call rang on. It only produces one call leg, and it will pick the first person in the hunt list to attribute that abandoned call or that voicemail call to. So you'll notice when I'm doing hunt group reporting, I will never add the abandoned or the answered call count because, again, that one row does not indicate who actually abandoned it. It's a hunt group. It's multiple people's responsibility. So for the per person, I don't add that. But when I'm talking about my search set statistics, again, the hunt group level here, it's very important to see answered, abandoned, and voicemail because that's going to tell you the quality that you're giving your customers. So now that I've added some general statistics there, we have our detail. I'll leave cradle to grave turned on, and let's see our end result here. And there we are. Let's take a look. So now what we have is basically everything that we requested. So it looks like I went up one call, so I have 140 calls. This is the search criteria that we used. 96 of those calls, 68%, almost 69% are answered. 1% is abandoned, 30% are going to voicemail, 5% of those calls are actually getting queued. So by utilizing that call scenarios, I was able to whittle this down to really a one-to-one relationship from calls coming in to answered, abandoned, and voicemail, and then also queued if you guys do any type of native call queuing. We've also added our user metrics. So when we were looking in our report, if I go ahead and go to our grouping section here, you can see these are our user metrics. These are the metrics we chose. So when I go back to my report, here are my users, and here are all the metrics that I chose. So now we're getting, again, that one-to-one relationship of calls coming in, 140, to the number of calls being answered, the 96. We also added our hour of day metrics here. So now we can see from a trending perspective, what are our busiest hours of the day from both a total call volume and a voicemail call volume. So one of the things we can see here is 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and 10 a.m. And actually, I should rerun this report in PST. Maybe I'll do that because it's going to make more sense. And there we go. So let me export that guy and just give him a rerun, and we'll take a look back at those graphs. They're going to make a little bit more sense to us now. And there we go. So we can see in my case, most of the calls that go to voicemail come in before the 9 o'clock hour. Okay. Well, most of the time we're open at the 9 o'clock hour. So we have a couple calls come in, quite a few calls come in. But now I'm looking at this. I can see that, you know what, from a business hour perspective, we may need to be able to get some folks in the office a little bit sooner because we could see a huge scale in calls at my 7 o'clock hour. And a vast majority of those are going into voicemail, and then it slowly starts to trickle down. We could see here at my 10 o'clock hour from a total calls perspective, it's about the same as my 7 o'clock hour, but we handle our calls a heck of a lot better. So when we start to look at hunt groups, when we start to look at staffing, I can clearly see I have a staffing problem in the morning. Also taking a look at our call volume, we added by date, so we can see September 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and our busiest days of the week. We can see September 4th, again, not that busy, but when we start to take a look at our voicemail count, as opposed to September 3rd, it's almost about the same. So from a staffing perspective, why are we doing so well on the 3rd and potentially not the 4th? And then, of course, here's all the detail of the calls that we reported on, including any of the cradle to grave. As you scroll through here, you can see that we are only counting each one of these rows once. The cradle to grave is going to go ahead and identify all of the call flows, but here's a perfect example of a call that we would have previously counted twice because we were just looking at the hunt group. But now we're only counting it once because we're focusing in on the fact that our call scenario was answered. It does not include any of these general call scenarios. All right, so another great option here is this one previously would have been counted 3 times because it came into the hunt group 3 different times. And this is a good one. We'll focus in on this one. It does have the normal call clearing, but that also ended up in voicemail. So again, this one is still being counted because we are including our call scenario for voicemail. And this is actually a really good one here. I'm going to show you another way to be able to utilize this to determine specifically calls that may not be getting answered by your agents. So the difference here is this is a call that actually rang off to an agent in the hunt group. We actually have a ring time over here to Nikki, but the call did not get answered and it subsequently went to voicemail. You may want to know how often that's happening. We can utilize the call scenarios, but also the cause codes to help narrow that down. So what we see in this call, in this particular call, is a cause code for no answer from user alerted. That's going to let me know that this call actually did ring somebody, rang for about 22 seconds, and I more than likely have a timeout value on my set up on my hunt group where if a call does not get answered in a certain amount of time, it's going to roll to voicemail. We may want to identify how often something like that is happening. So we're going to utilize these 2 values here to help narrow down how often something like that is happening, where calls are actually ringing to my agents, they're not getting answered in a certain amount of time, and then going to voicemail. So we're going to utilize our call scenarios for that. So we're going to go back over to our report right here. Now we're going to strictly focus in on just the voicemail calls. Again, I want to know how often these calls are ringing to people and not getting picked up. But we can't just focus in on voicemail because, as we saw in my report, a lot of calls come in and they just go to voicemail. Nobody's available, or there's no agents available, or it's before business hours. So we're going to focus in on those cause codes And we're going to look strictly for that ones that don't get answered. And if we take a look back at our report, which just resized on me and I lost it, there we go. We can see our cause code when this scenario happens is no answer from user alerted. So if I do no answer from user alerted, I have my match all criteria. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to show how many calls came into my call center, rang at agents, were not answered, and subsequently rolled the voicemail. So let's see what we get. And there we go. So I've got 4 calls that happened to. I'm going to export these guys, and I'm just going to turn off, well, we'll leave data grouping on. Let's just see what we get here. And there we go. So there's our 4 calls, our 4 voicemail calls, no associated user ID. That's because voicemail does not have a person identified to it. If I did this off a device, it would identify the voicemail device. But what we want to look at here are our cradle to grave. So we said by using those filters, we've narrowed down this to 4 different calls. So here are our 4 calls. If I scroll through the call scenario, you can see each one of these is going to be counted once. Here's a call that got queued, rolled out of the queue, rang for 12 seconds, did not get answered, and subsequently rolled to voicemail. Here's another one. Again, same situation. Call came in. This one didn't get queued, rolled into the hunt group. Again, this one's not in orange. We're not counting this leg. We're not counting this leg. This is just basically the ring out leg, but we are counting the fact that it went to voicemail. So this is a great way to also help identify how are your customers being treated? What is taking place with those customers? Yes, we may have abandoned calls or we have voicemail calls, but why are they going to voicemail? Is it because they're calling before hours? Well, we could take a look at our call graphs and we could see all the calls that take place before hours. Or we can also narrow down by using our filters to determine how many of those callers had an experience where they called in, talked to multiple people, but when they got to the hunt group, the call just rang and was subsequently not answered. That's an important value when we're talking about customer service and the quality of our customer service, because the last thing you want is to ring through several people, ring for 30 seconds, and then all of a sudden end up in a voicemail box, where if the queue was full, they may go to voicemail instantly, or they may go to a queue in that case. It does depend on how your hunt group is configured, whether you're using native call queuing. So there's a lot that goes into the data, but utilizing those 3 filters by focusing in on just your hunt group, your voicemail calls, your answered calls, and abandoned calls is basically a great way to whittle down exactly how those calls are being handled, and then utilizing the subsequent filters or criteria or scenarios to isolate how many are being answered, your percent going to voicemail, your percent being abandoned. All right. Dre, with all of that said, do we have any questions out there?
Vic, yeah, we do have one. Charles is asking, can this report be saved and added to the templates available for download?
That's actually a really good question. So our next release 15.2 is coming out, and we are adding call scenarios for WebEx calling as well. When we do that with our next release, we will be redoing the templates to include these 3 values. So the templates that are available on our website, the hunt group template will be redone to include these values. But to answer your question, yes, once I export these results right here, I can click Save for Future Use. And I'll just call this template hunt group. Don't mind my spelling. And now when I run this report, it is now saved, and you can go back and rerun it, copy it, change the hunt group, but now you'll see that it is saved over here. Template hunt group report. There it is. All right, so that's a great way to save it. And now I may want to make this for different hunt groups. All I have to do is copy it, change the hunt group number, change the name of it, and you've got this great report that could be, created and shared out to multiple individuals or scheduled. Any other questions, Dre?
No, I don't see any more currently. I'll give it another second or two here. I wonder if he was asking that if we can get that on our put this on our website as well.
Yep, it will be. Yeah. So
Okay.
out on our website, if you go over to variphy.com, you're going to notice that there are templates available for download off of our website. This one has not been updated yet, but I expect it to be updated very shortly. That we will update this when our 15.2 version comes out. The reason being is we're going to go ahead and uniform all of our templates for Variphy 15.2.
Great, great.
And I am a human. Oh, click the oranges. There we go. All right, click the oranges. There we go.
All
And this
right,
will show you our product downloads. But yeah, go ahead, Dre.
Yeah, well, we're just up against it, so just wanted to check. I don't think we have any more questions. I'm going to go ahead and take control back. Thank you, Victor. That was pretty informative and excited for those. All right, let's see. Let me go ahead and share this out again. And there we go. All right. We're going to now announce our $50 Amazon gift card winner, and this week's winner is Kirk Overby. Congratulations. Your account manager will reach out soon and get you that gift card. Once again, thanks everybody who attended today's webinar. Don't forget, next week, September 13th, we're going to be going through all the bells and whistles of 15.2 with Brian and Matt. Always a good time with those two. So thank you guys so much for coming out today. We'll see you next week.
Thanks all.